welcome to a new episode of The Influence Factor by the Influencer Marketing Factory. Before we dive in today's episode, I wanted to ask you to subscribe to our channel. It could be on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, we're everywhere. Why? Because every single week there are fantastic guests coming on the podcast, and notification can help you just to be updated on the new episodes out there. Hey Gigi, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here and to chat with you today.
Absolutely. First of all, as I was telling you, in the pre-call, love that you have the microphone, the headphone on. I can see that you have, this is not your first rodeo, right? When it comes to podcasting and these three type of things. So I love it. The voice is crisp. So thank you for being,
of course.
Right?
I think this might be around my 90th podcast I've been on. I have a playlist on Spotify. You can go listen to the podcasts I've been on, and I'm pretty sure it's getting up there near 100 guested episodes, which is kind of wild.
Amazing. When have you started? And then we're gonna go more about you, but when did you start doing all these podcast appearances?
In 2020, September, October, November, December 2020, and then into 2021. And really, I think I did about 50 in 20. I got close to 50 in 2021. Last year, I focused more on quality over quantity. And then this year is a little bit of the same, but the higher the caliber of the show, the more weight your words hold in some ways, and the more people you can reach. And so it's just a slow process, but I'm really excited to be here.
Fantastic. Thank you for being here. And first of all, so who is Gigi? What do you do? What are you doing lately? How did you start your career? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many different directions I could go here, but I will give you the long story short. I went to LaGuardia High School of Music and Art here in New York City. So I have always been immersed in art and have known what it means to truly find your passion and follow it. I then went on to the University of Southern California for both my BFA and my Master's of Science, and I just finished that in December of 2022. So I've got those 2 degrees under my belt now. And when I was an undergrad in Los Angeles, I joined a social media club called USC Reach, which is focused on building a community for creators, which is now 6 years old, believe it or not, which is sometimes I can't believe it, that I was in the founding class of the first people to ever go through it, and that was 6 years ago. And so I really took my passion for photography and started shooting for brands. And when someone didn't show up one day, I stepped in and did both of the work on setting the ad up to be shot and then also standing in as talent. And I just kind of stuck with it throughout college. I did about 13 different brand ambassador field marketing roles, which I don't know how they exist in a post-COVID world, but when I did it, it was all about throwing parties and getting people to download the app or in the product or using the product, whatever that is, to really just be the voice of the brand, be an extension of it, be the representative on campus. And it was paid work, and then also paid to post a social media post per week as well. So that kind of got my feet wet with these partnerships. And then when I graduated in 2020 with my undergrad, I enrolled in my master's degree, started my LLC, and graduated, and told my parents that I wasn't going to be getting a full-time job all in the same day or the same week. And they were like, oh my God. And I was like, no, trust me, it's going to be fine. Just, it'll happen. It'll work out. And I think part of that has really just been a lot of persistence over the past 2.5 years, and really just focusing on my mission, which is spreading positivity and mindset shifts to as many people as possible, and talking about the hard things like health issues, mental and physical health issues, and confidence issues, and really shifting the world around that. And some projects I'm working on now, I actually am going to be having a book come out in the next couple of months. So it's a children's book. So definitely keep your eyes peeled for that. And I am just going to different universities talking about social media literacy and creator economy, but also about patient leadership. So those are my 2 big projects right now, but there's a lot in the pipeline.
Fantastic. First of all, congratulations on all the things that you're up to. And what I like, and that's, why also it's this this episode, I would like to go in two main, I would say, categories here. So one is the business of being a content creator, ambassador, influencer, and then we're gonna go more in the body confidence moment, right? That you were now mentioning. And what I like when you say that you're like quite busy with all these different things that you're up to, I think it's really great because finally, in the past years, people are finally seeing that people online are not just, a face that is promoting things or talking about only, things that read like superficial, maybe topics, you can do much more. And then, as you said before, like you create an LLC, we're going to go into that in a second. Like you can actually move from and shift from just merely being, again, someone that is on social media to actually create a company, right? You can have a group of people helping you out. You can have assistants. You can like, again, multiply yourself, right?
Yeah.
And finally, we're showing that even more young people are doing that. So first of all, let's go a bit more in detail there, right? So let's talk about like how you and others are going from like, again, being either a content creator, an influencer, or for example, in college, like an ambassador for certain, companies, to having this professional mindset and be like, you know what, I'm going to create an LLC, right?
Yeah.
And then I'm going to do things in a certain way. How did you first of all find out / how did you came up with the idea like, you know what, I'm going to open a company?
Yeah, there's a couple of things here. And in a lot of ways, like you don't necessarily need a traditional education to really learn these things. However, I do think that my time at USC really kind of informed a lot of these decisions of making smart moves when you're building a business, as well as different things that are necessary to simply not get in trouble when you start making money in alternative ways. And especially when I was in art school, it was all about like learning about freelance business and what to do. And as an artist, you would need to do the exact same thing, start some kind of company, create a production studio, whatever that would look like. And so I decided to just call my parents' accountant, and I was like, hey, I've made about $20K in brand deals, and I'm getting these 1099 forms or and some W-2s for my internships. And this was the first year I was doing it like part-time. And they were like, yeah, like you're going to need to pay taxes on that. Like, here's what you need to do. Here's how you set it up. And so I really just, I called the accountant and was like, can you set me up? And they're like, well, what are you? And I was like, I guess I'm a media company, but I'm also kind of like an agency, but I'm also kind of like production, and I'm also kind of creative media. So I don't know. And I'm also like a public figure, and I do public speaking. And they're like, so what should we categorize this as? And I was like, I don't know. Like, this is your job, not mine. So they basically helped me set up that LLC. I think they filed it under like a media company. And that's because of the breadth of different kinds of projects that were going on. But again, like I was really fearless and just like going out of my way to ask, people that know what they're doing to help me. And I think that's really important. But I know for a lot of these creators that maybe they blow up overnight and they get really big, and then they get signed to an agency. Departments in these talent agencies will help them get that all squared away, or their talent manager will do that. Or, something like United Talent has United Ventures, which helps people, for example, like Emma Chamberlain, start Chamberlain Coffee and really diversify their business outside of their model of social media. And I'm not at that level in any way, but I think it's great to know those kinds of things do exist when you get to a certain level, and there are people and teams in place to help you really like scale that way. So that's just kind of something that I really thought about. But I mean, to learn about taxes and to learn about bookkeeping and what softwares to use. I mean, I use QuickBooks. It's very kind of like plug and play. You put your rates in, you can make an invoice real quick. You can get paid direct deposit. You see your cash flow. You can get contractors. You can generate invoices and send out the 1099s. And so I think it's important to take the time to look into that. But there isn't really a guidebook on what I think works. And so it's definitely really interesting, I think, to just kind of like think about that whole situation and how most creators that at least that I know, like they just pocket all the money and like take the money without saving for taxes. And they're like, I'm making just as much as I made in my corporate job because of these 3 contracts. And I'm like, but are you saving a third of that or half of that, like for your expenses and your taxes? And they're like, oh, no, like that doesn't matter. And I'm like, no, like it really does. Like it really does. And hopefully over time, we'll just get better at kind of teaching people and there will be more knowledge around that.
No, absolutely. I mean, as you said correctly before, it's so new for majority of the people, even for accountants, that it's difficult for them to categorize you somehow, right? So first of all, there is not education about that. And this, reminds me, for example, when, as something similar, like people that get into like sports, professionally speaking, they're also quite young and they start seeing all this influx of money. They don't know how to manage it. And majority of the people, of course, if they don't have like a manager or someone that can help them, like, managing their finances, they usually go broke in a few years. And that's also what happens sometimes to content creators and influencers. Like if they don't know how to manage their finances, it's crazy. If you have anyone helping you out right now, like for example, assistants, do you have a group with you helping you out? And secondly, when do you think that someone should add either an assistant or also a virtual assistant? Like in the past days, especially with remote work, there are so many virtual assistants that you can get, like, even oversee. Like, what is your approach when it comes to that? Like, is it for everyone only after a certain number of brand deals plus sponsorship? Is it just to help you out? What is your approach when it comes to getting help with someone, like from someone else in your own company? Hey, quick break. This podcast is hosted by the Influencer Marketing Factory. We are an influencer marketing agency that helps brands and companies engage with Gen Z and millennials on social media. We take care of influencer identification, storytelling, creativity, negotiation, contracting, campaign management, ROI analysis, in-depth reporting, content boosting, and much, much more. Are you interested in learning more? You can find us at theinfluencermarketingfactory.com or you can Google the Influencer Marketing Factory.
Totally. So I actually have a team of 6 women working with me, and it's really exciting that I'm able to do that. I actually mostly work with new grads and also college women. So I want this to be an experience where they could do this as a part-time job for, let's say, like 40 to 50 hours a month. So very part-time for them, but invested enough. And I think the biggest thing is you need to get that help, like, only if and when you get to a point where you can't do what you do best. Like, I can't do all of my payroll, I can't do all of my video editing and still show up at events and be on and speak with my full energy. And so I think that just kind of keeping that in mind, I never worked with a purely virtual assistant. I, worked with someone that I knew from USC, and then it kind of was like word of mouth, where after that, then it would, I would go and work with someone that they would recommend. And so like when they were done with the semester, I guess. And so overall, it's very personal. It's a personal decision. But for me, like I don't have millions of followers. I have just under 500,000 followers across all my platforms. And I have a team of 6, and that's what helps me do what I do best. I also think it's important to just make sure that, like for me, I needed to delegate video editing because I needed speed. I needed to get more videos out quicker, and somebody else who's trained in, Premiere or Final Cut is going to do it much faster than me editing it on InShot on my phone. Not that I can. I got a BFA in production, and, I learned all of this stuff. And so it's not that I couldn't do it. It's just that to do it at the level that I needed to get it done, it was going to take me an hour or two. And an hour or two of my time, I think, is more valuable spent researching on things that I could talk more intelligently about when I'm on a panel or on a podcast or even in person meeting someone, than it would be spending my time video editing. And so it's really, my friend London Lazarson said this to me when I interviewed him on my podcast, was, delegation is key. And the more structure that you have, the less burnout that you'll have. And the less structure, the more burnout. And so therefore, if you delegate tasks to other people and have a structure in place, you all collectively won't burn out if you're being honest and you each have things going on. And that's what it means to run a team. And a lot of people don't know this. A lot of creators don't even know where to go with a lot of their business building skills. And I think there's so much to learn. I mean, with sending out like tax forms and for contractors and getting your expenses in and hitting all those deadlines, like those aren't things that even you get reminded about. You have to remind yourself, and you have to know that and teach that to yourself, or have an accountant or a CPA remind you. And so it's just, there's a lot going on. But yeah, ultimately, like I said, it's when you've reached a point where you can't do what you do best that you need to get help.
I think it makes absolute sense. I was also talking with other content creators, of course, in the past years, and more or less they told me the same. If you, especially about also the passion that got you into that, if you start losing the passion, and it's mostly like bureaucracy and like editing just because you have to do more content, after a while you're removing the passion out of it, and people can see it, right? The content start becoming a bit less interesting. Yourself get burnout. I feel that people notice. So let me ask you this: you talk about like the editing, all the taxes, and so on. What about brand deals? Are you still the person in charge of that? We have someone that help you out, and usually let's go also more about the negotiation, because we both have brands listening, marketers, but also some content creators. Would be nice to have like your opinion on how to negotiate a brand deal when it comes to maybe an influencer marketing campaign, because I'm pretty sure that people want to know that.
Yeah, I would say that probably like 80% of brand deals are inbound into my inbox from the brand, and then we negotiate. The 20% is pitching, and you do pitch a lot, and that's what a manager would be doing, or that's what a talent agent would be doing, is bringing you those opportunities at the expense of between 15 and 20 to 25% at times. And I think personally, like, if you can manage those negotiations, and if you've built a team to the point where you have kind of enough space in there to negotiate these deals yourself, I think that's really great. However, the caveat is sometimes that brands, will take advantage of the fact that you're a creator and try to like leverage, at least in my experience, they'll try to leverage like, oh, well, other creators at this level are charging less or half your rate. And so therefore, you should lower your rate and your value for us. And I think that that's really predatory. And at the same time, I've seen the other side of things where I've seen talent agents in it, and they've been like, yeah, like, Gigi, you should change your vertical and make more Get Ready With Me so you can get into beauty, because there's more money in beauty than there is in, lifestyle or wellness. And I'm like, I'm not going to change my integrity just so that you can make a buck. Like, that's not happening. And unfortunately, I think they do prey on newer creators that are emerging, and they don't know what they're doing. So those new creators don't know about negotiating, and they trust that someone else is going to do it with a good intention. And then it's really only the talent agent or the talent manager is being that broker when something comes inbound to you, and not necessarily bringing you things. And this is just from my personal experience in the past, but not to say that I'm not hopeful that there are good people out there. I just think, there is a potential for a lot of shady stuff to happen. But again, like, I also pitch a lot of the time, and a lot of that is through authentic networking. I have I make custom decks for each brand that I pitch to. So I made like a really awesome deck that I pitched to the Nikon team, because I've been shooting Nikon for years and years and years. And this came because I was connected to this lady on LinkedIn. She viewed my profile, and I nearly flipped out because I literally have Nikon cameras all around, like literally next to me almost at all times. And, I sent her this pitch and my story and my ideas. And then she was like, yeah, word. Like, we're in a Japanese calendar because it's a Japanese brand for finance and stuff. So the contract won't be coming until that year starts. But otherwise, like, definitely keep your inbox open. So, and that happened simply because I was authentic to myself and my brand. So How did negotiation go for something like that? I mean, a lot of the time it's like, hey, we have this thing, like, here, like, are you interested? And you're like, yeah, cool. And they're like, okay, here's an NDA to sign. And then they're like, okay, here's kind of like the content that we're thinking, send us your rates. And then you're like, oh, but what's your budget? And they're like, they'll give you a budget and they'll say, oh, here's what we're thinking. You're like, oh, my rates are actually this. Could you meet me here? Or they'll dance around and say, hey, we really need your rates so that we can like see what kind of content, we could really fill. So sometimes, let's say the budget's $10,000 and normally with no usage rights, and normally you charge $6,000 for a reel with a cross posting to TikTok maybe, and like a set of stories, they might go with you versus if your friend says, oh, I'm $20,000 for that. They're going to choose sometimes the person that goes less, or they'll be like, yeah, we'll meet you at 10,000 for only one of those deliverables. So I think it's really helpful for the brands to also be flexible with the talent. And then one other thing, I talked to, a lot of people at PR agencies who are doing these negotiations really on behalf of the brands. The biggest thing they said is that response rate, like they were like, you would be surprised at how people just don't freaking respond. Like it will take them a week to respond to like an inquiry. And for me, I'm always someone that's like, if it's interesting, I'm going to respond within the day because I don't want the opportunity to pass me by. And she said, the reason why we love you and why we keep working with you and sending you things is because you respond so quickly. And so I think that's really good versus, here's the caveat, if you work with an agent or a manager, a lot of the times it will take a month to be redlining the contract and going back and forth about the rate. And it's like so much politics that ends up happening behind the scenes between the agents and the PR agencies that I think it's just like a lot. So right now I am flying solo in terms of brand partnerships, and I don't work with a talent manager at the moment.
I get it. I think that it can happen, especially for those like talent agencies that have hundreds or thousands, right? So again, go more into the different layers between you, the brand, right? So it's of course a bit complex. For example, in our case, we also do representation, and we have some tens, right, of people, between actually now 20 and 30, and I can see that at that size. Is still doable, like, to have a good, right, the good ratio between, so I totally get it. Like some people prefer to go solo, some others want to go maybe to the big agency, and then they find out that maybe it was not that amazing as they thought. So for each person, right, for each different influencer, it depends, right, depending what do they want to do, how they want to manage their life. And I also want to ask you, because you said something before about, you don't want necessarily to do a type of content just because there is maybe more money involved. So how do you choose the type of content that you want to create?
Yeah, definitely a fantastic question. I think talking about passion and really finding what fuels your fire and what makes you fulfilled when you're creating content is the most important thing. I think if you reach a point where you kind of stop being fulfilled with your content and you're not enjoying it, you have to change something, you have to iterate, and you also have to be okay with that over time. But for me personally, like I found photography so long ago, and it was always about pulling out the confidence in other people. And over time, I had to learn how to have confidence within myself to really help other people find that within themselves too. And so it's always been a mission of mine through my creative outlet to empower others. And I just kind of found different lanes, whether that is empowering people who are struggling with health issues to set firmer boundaries and be more confident in themselves as they are, whether that's helping younger people be more confident with their body, whether that is in general just being more confident with setting boundaries and being more positive with yourself. I think there's a lot that goes into it, and it's different for everybody. But I personally think you have to, when you're starting out, test a lot. I did a lot of different unboxing videos for a while and like loved unboxing and was like, I made it about, oh, this is like how this unboxing makes me feel, or this is what unboxing helps me with my confidence, or so on and so forth. But it was never really something that like it never really stuck because it felt empty in some ways. And so I just think that over time you'll figure it out. It's hard to choose, but at the same time, I've seen friends kind of stick with something. I have a friend, Desam, and she basically went out and was like, yeah, like I want to make New York City Rex as she's exploring and getting to know New York. And so she just started a page where she's completely just going to different places in New York City and making the same kind of video, the same format, staying consistent. And over time, that does well because people love consistency, regardless of what you choose.
And now that you found your topic, right, or at least you find what you love to produce and send it out, and people are enjoying that, how do you manage now, like your, let's say, your weekly scheduling, for example? Do you already know what you're gonna go and make for the next 7 days? Is it 1 month of already like sort of agenda? Is it 3 months? Like, how do you really manage that? Again, going back that now you have a team helping you out, for example.
Yeah, definitely. I think, I talk a lot with my executive assistant, and she helps remind me to do invoices and to send out certain pitch emails and things like that, and deadlines when I have to get them done, or reminders, because I am on so many different podcasts. And usually I do book out podcasts like farther in advance than, a couple of days. Like I try a week or 2 weeks or 3 weeks even sometimes. And that really helps me because I have it in my schedule. And, I think people are very flexible, hopefully, in today's day and age, where it's like, if you can't do it now, like maybe you'll be able to do it in the future, and you can always be flexible if you need to be. But ultimately, just really, I do schedule in time for writing briefs, taking meetings, talking with my team, as well as like getting lunch and getting my hair done and going to doctor's appointments and all that, because it is really important at the end of the day to like take care of all of that. So yeah.
You said that you organize your week, you are really like into the body confidence movement that you are like now advocate for. And, I can see that you care about that as a topic. What about also like mental health and also the burnout that you said before? So the question for the burnout is mostly more about like content creators, but I guess the mental health is also something quite hot as a topic. What is the conversation that you usually have also with your followers? Because social media, you can use it not just as a unilateral communication, but you have conversation with them. Does it ever happen to you that you actually had people maybe asking you more in-depth questions after that you shared videos about, for example, mental health?
Definitely. I think it, in a way, opens my content to potentially a lot of judgment from others. But at the same time, I'm not even thinking about that. I'm thinking about, how is it going to help other people? What can people gain from this? How can they reframe something in a positive way that maybe wasn't as positive before? And how can we learn from something instead of digging the hole deeper for ourselves? And so for me, the emotional, I think, trigger with my content in the storytelling is, it's about persistence. It's about getting through hard times and coming out and proving to the world that you can still do hard things and still live a good life and a happy, positive attitude. And so, my choice to talk about things on the internet really came from feeling like I couldn't talk to people in my life about it because they didn't go through the same thing. And I just think that it was something that happened naturally. And I think right now there's a lot of conversations about creators being like burnout. I mean, look at the D'Amelio show and you see the pressure that these girls are on, and they're crying and everything. And that definitely happens for a lot of creators. What I don't necessarily think is always great about that is, it's like, then people are like recording when they're having their hardest times, and they're making a video because it's a trend to show a glow up of like, I wasn't doing well and like now I'm doing so much better. And it's like, are you making that for a trend? Or are you making that so that you can show it? Does it help you truly feel that growth? And so I get a little bit worried about people sharing a lot online because of that. But at the same time, like I've taken those kinds of videos and documented my experience in a way that I think is really conducive to my mission of empowering people to take control of their health. And if that means making a silly video about it, then okay. Like I think people need to do the best they can with what they have. And if their coping mechanism is creative and they're doing it a certain way, then like I don't want to judge them. I also think there are severe issues with not having enough knowledge around certain things. I think a big issue is people talking about mental health in a way that isn't necessarily healthy. I think that there's a lot more that could be done, and there's a lot more integration from the platform side of things of using different resources and different organizations that are meant to help support mental health initiatives, like nonprofits like the JED Foundation, the Mental Health Coalition, so on and so forth. There's so many of them that should be working with creators to provide resources that can be like, yeah, like if you're struggling here, reach out, right? Like I think those are really, really important things that we're just not talking about, we're not implementing. And I think on the brand side of things, we also have to think about this is for brands and creators, but I think brands especially, is remember that if you are working as a social media manager, a campaign manager, and you make a campaign and it does so well, immediately your dopamine levels are going to go up. They're going to skyrocket, right? It's going to be like, wow, it did so well. It generated millions of followers or millions of views. And this is like amazing. And then the next one you do might flop. And you might be like, wow, I'm such a failure. I didn't do well. Like and it's going to, your self-esteem is going to plummet. Your confidence plummets. And overall, it just creates this like super high, low in the industry. And this happens again, both on the creator side and on the brand side. I've worked on both. And it is very damaging. And we're not talking about this enough. And I think that we need to figure out how to manage this and how to address this, because it's definitely a really frightening moment, I think, that we're living through, where our self-worth is dictated by the work that we're doing because of metrics. And I think this has existed with TV and billboard and, all those kinds of advertisements for a while. I just think because it's accessible right here all the time, it's different than if you were to go and clock in at your desk and look at the numbers and analyze with a team, why didn't this work? It's mostly like, oh, the algorithm just didn't choose you today. And I think it's a big kind of issue we need to look at and talk about.
And have you find a way for yourself, any tips or tricks that maybe working for you for any of these moments that you want to share with the others?
Yeah, I would say don't take things personally. The same way that if somebody says something that maybe they don't mean, or if you were like, hey, can you hang out? And someone's like, no, sorry, I'm just like totally wiped out. Like, it has nothing to do with you. It has to do with somebody else not having the energy in the moment. And I think in the same way, that can be true for social media, where like you put your heart and soul into something and you have an emotional tie to it because you're like, this is my baby, this is my campaign, I've been working on it for months and months and months, and then it like ends up not working out. It can be really like soul crushing and damaging. And so I think when we invest so much emotion into our work, that is a downfall, is we can let it kind of affect us. And so don't take things too personally. And then also, like, keep it stupid simple, right? Or simple stupid. Keep it simple stupid. Both of them work that way. Like, just put it up there, see what happens. If it does well, it does well. If it doesn't do well, you move on. You're going to forget about this in a month or a year or 2 years from now. And then the next thing I would say is also, like, really take that time to put your phone on do not disturb, and don't always be invested in it. I leave my phone on do not disturb now. I didn't do that before this year. I just didn't really understand what the hype was, but in doing it, I've been able to really protect like myself from being so inundated with information. Like, we're not meant to be accessible all the time. We're not meant to be receiving so many likes and comments and views. And so it's only it's I think it's only a matter of time before we come up with a digital handbook that's going to really be something that people are able to reference and use as a method to protect their mental health.
Yeah, it makes sense. It's like, many people are saying when you wake up, you shouldn't check your phone for maybe the first hour, right?
Yeah.
Go out, take a walk, something else. Easy to say, difficult to do, I would say, right? Because
Yeah.
I'm also guilty
Yeah.
of waking up, check social media,
Me
check
too.
email. You want that,
Me too.
right? That rush of like, dopamine there, like, and that is like, oh, look at this notification. You always want something more, right? So I agree on that. You want a good balance. And to start wrapping up on the episode, anything, Gigi, that I haven't asked you today that are either super excited that you do with social media, or anything that is like maybe something that people don't know and that they should look at, So I'm just like, picking your brain here and see if there is anything else you would like to add.
Yeah, I mean, I think that there is a lot of work to be done for the true voice of the creator, right? I think there's a lot of companies out there that say they're creating more money in the creator economy by just lowering the barrier to entry and making it easier for people to get jobs or gigs that are a couple $100s here, a couple $100s there. That isn't really productive to the entire environment, because overall it's going to lead to an oversaturation of people entering the creator economy, making content that's somewhat empty or just because it's a brand deal that they could get for a couple $100s, instead of hiring a creator that's maybe truly aligned, right? Like with this whole new UGC era, this is about getting cheap work quick. That's what UGC is. In my eyes, I don't always think the storytelling's on par. I don't always think that there's a true creator behind it. Are people talented at producing quick videos? Yes, but I think true people that are doing this for their job should be the ones working with the brands who are truly going to tell a story for the brand that's unique to the audience, that is personable, and overall provides like a really nice ad space. And so I always say, like, leave more space for women, invest in people of color when you're doing these different marketing campaigns, and don't always go with the same people. Test new influencers out, because I think that there is enough room for everybody. You just have to be interested in offering it to everybody respectfully. I think there's a long, long way that we have to go. And a lot of times when there are people that are, look a certain way, they're going to choose those same certain influencers to do those campaigns, and that look like them, that relate to them, and that's not the entire market. So I really just think we need to continue to also diversify and invest in women.
I love the message. Absolutely. Inclusion and diversity, especially influencer marketing, can go a long way. So thank you for sharing these thoughts. Absolutely believe in that as well. Gigi, congratulations on everything that you created so far, and good luck with everything that you have open. I can see they are really busy with a lot of things. Love to see in that. And again, thank you also for joining us today on the podcast.
Yeah. Thank you.
And this was another episode of The Influence Factor by the Influencer Marketing Factory, and I'll see you in the next episode.